This is my review of Matchroom Fight Camp number 1. Originally, it was supposed to be Conor Benn topping the bill, but he had to pull out, and so it ended up being Lee Wood challenging Can Xu or Zhu Can. On BoxRec, it's listed as Can Xu, but on the DAZN broadcast, they were calling him Zhu Can or Zhu Can, however you want to pronounce it. Anyway, let's start at the bottom. Campbell Hatton versus Jakub Laskowski. Campbell Hatton hasn't looked impressive thus far in his pro career. I'm not trying to have a go at the guy. I'm just describing exactly what he's done in the boxing ring. And I know he didn't have many amateur fights and what have you, but whatever the case may be, he looked better than he did in his pro debut, certainly, but I haven't seen anything yet that would suggest he has the kind of talent to go as far as his dad or anywhere close to that, much less further. So yeah, he went in there and he won a 4-round points decision over Laskowski. It was what it was. Nothing really much to talk about there. Then there was Sandy Ryan versus Kirsty Bavington. A very messy fight, and probably the least said about that, the better. It was a debut for Sandy Ryan. Then we had Anthony Fowler versus Rico Muller. I believe it's pronounced Muller. That's how the DAZN team were pronouncing it. He is a German guy. So yeah, Fowler, I've been liking his improvements under Shane McGuigan. I think he's changed his style up for the better, putting his punches together well, using distance better, controlled the action. And now after this, of course, he goes on to fight Billam-Smith later on this year, which will be a much sterner test and a real interesting bout. But here, it was really a stay busy kind of fight and a tune-up against a tough German. You know, Muller definitely came to try and win. He wasn't just here to make up the numbers, but ultimately Anthony Fowler did get him out in the 8th round, put his punches together, and the referee stepped in and said no more. So good performance by Fowler. I like his improvements. And just a little bit of trivia here, and something I'm curious about, is why, I've only seen this in the UK, why some British fighters wear unbranded rival gloves. Because I think it was Anthony Joshua. He was the first one I saw wear rival gloves that don't have all the branding on them. They're just plain. I think his were plain white. And then I saw Luke Campbell. I think he also wore unbranded rival gloves. And in this instance, Anthony Fowler was wearing rival gloves that were just completely plain, no rival graphics on them or anything. And I'm not sure why they do that. Maybe they just prefer the look of them. Who knows? But I just find it interesting. And how do I know they're rival? Well, you can tell by looking at the cuff, because rival gloves have got an angled cuff. Their cuff is not straight across the glove. It's at an angle. So if you look at Anthony Fowler's glove, and I know the shape of boxing gloves anyway, but if you look at Anthony Fowler's glove, if you're not so familiar, look how the cuff is slanted rather than straight. That's how you can tell. But good performance by Anthony Fowler anyway. And this fight will stand him in good stead going into the fight against Billam-Smith, because Muller, not as good as Smith, but a similar kind of style. So yeah, that will serve him well. Then we had Jack Cullen versus Avni Yildirim. I thought this was a good performance by Cullen. Yildirim, of course, coming off the back-to-back losses against Anthony Durrell and Canelo Alvarez. A really poor performance against Alvarez from Yildirim. Look, of course he was outclassed and what have you, but he said prior to the fight that Canelo had never fought a Turkish warrior before. And so I really was hoping that he would go out like a warrior and really give it a go against Canelo. But it turns out he was absolutely petrified and just froze and really didn't do anything against Canelo. He was just a sitting duck, a heavy bag really for Canelo Alvarez, and got taken out in a couple of rounds. Here against Jack Cullen, obviously he had a much better chance of winning, but I watched this fight on DAZN. It was in high frame rate. DAZN, I'm glad are now doing high frame rate for their shows, because prior to now, when I've watched stuff on DAZN, I know it's different maybe in America, but in the UK, watching on the DAZN app, it's all been in 30 frames or 24 frames per second. I'm not sure which. But this show was in either 50 or 60 frames. I say either 50 or 60 because the UK has the PAL format, And PAL format frame rates in the old days were always 24 frames. And I think on BT and several other UK broadcast networks, they broadcast in 50 frames, okay, which is doubled, as obviously, well, just a bit over double 24. Whereas in America, with the NTSC format, they would broadcast in 30 frames back in the days, and now, of course, they broadcast in 60. So, again, I don't know whether it was 50 or 60, but it was a high frame rate, and it was good to see. Very clear picture. And I clearly saw Jack Cullen outlanding Avni Yildirim in all the rounds I can remember. So you've got some people saying that the scores were too wide. I've got absolutely no problem whatsoever with the scorecards. One of them had Jack Cullen winning every single round. I got no issue with that. Could you have given Yildirim a round or two here and there? Maybe. But this was a fight for me which was very easy to score, and Jack Cullen won it hands down. Avni Yildirim was extremely poor. Accuracy was poor. Wasn't getting through on target very often. There was a brief moment later on in the fight when he managed to bloody Jack Cullen's nose. But other than that, small little spell there, it was Jack Cullen all the way, landing consistently clean punches on Avni Yildirim, boxing mainly on the back foot. And he shook Yildirim several times in the bout. In fact, it got to the stage where he was shaking Yildirim so often, it was kind of a bit puzzling that he didn't try and go for the knockout. Maybe he didn't want to leave himself vulnerable. Maybe he was just, concerned about pacing himself and what have you. But he did noticeably shake Avni Yildirim several times. And if he'd really stepped on it, he might have been able to get him out of there. But either way, he won the fight comfortably. Good victory for Jack Cullen. He moves on to bigger and better things. I think this gives him, is it a top 10 or top 15 ranking, world ranking now? So, yep. Next on the list was Tommy McCarthy versus Chris Billam-Smith. This was for the vacant British Cruiserweight title, and there was also the European and Commonwealth titles on the line. This was a tough fight, good fight, close fight. I know there's a lot of people out there who felt that Tommy McCarthy was hard done by. He shook Billam-Smith earlier on in the fight. I forget which round it was, but he landed a right hand. I think kind of caught Billam-Smith on the forehead or the eye socket around there and really appeared to shake him. But Billam-Smith was able to overcome that rocky moment. And, McCarthy appears to have the longer arms than Billam-Smith. I don't know what the reaches were in the tail of the tape, but as I've mentioned so many times on my channel, reach and arm length are two different measurements. McCarthy appeared to have the longer arms, and therefore he was landing some nice sneaky shots on the outside here and there. But up close, Billam-Smith tended to get the better of it. So it was a back and forth battle. Both guys had their moments. I thought McCarthy was a bit sloppy at times with his work, whereas Billam-Smith was a bit more neat and tidy. Nonetheless, you give the fight to whoever you want. I'm not going to get drawn into a debate about who should have won and this person was hard done by or the other person was hard done by. I think it was close enough to make a case for either man. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below about the Tommy McCarthy, Chris Billam-Smith fight. And by the way, apparently McCarthy's people are calling for an immediate rematch. They believe they were hard done by, as I say. They want to run it back immediately. And Eddie Hearn after the fight said, why not? We can run it back. No problem at all. So we might get to see this one again. And then top of the bill, it was, as I mentioned at the start of the video, Lee Wood challenging, let's just call him Zucan, for the WBA regular title. Now, judging by the comments left on my videos over the past few years with regards to this WBA regular belt, the majority of my subscribers do not count it as a legitimate world title. That's the majority of my subscribers. They don't count this as a legit world title. So is this really Lee Wood winning a world title? You guys tell me. I'm just describing what I see in the comment section of my videos. Still a great achievement for him. Been around a long time, tough career, but he managed to pick up a win here against Zucan, who I believe is a Golden Boy fighter. I think they mentioned on a broadcast. Or was it Eddie Hearn mentioned it post-fight? And he really dominated the bout, Lee Wood. He was the far superior boxer in there. He was switch hitting. He was faster, better footwork, better at long range, just controlled the action throughout. And it's always nice to get the stoppage at the end of a fight. In fact, that's one thing I forgot to talk about, is the fact that Avni Yildirim, at the end of the Jack Cullen fight, raised his hands as if he'd won. I mean, that to me was absurd. I know some fighters do it in close fights, relatively close fights. To me, that Jack Cullen fight wasn't remotely close. Cullen won it by a wide margin in my book. So when you look at the main event, Lee Wood versus Zhu Can, yes, Wood, for most people, was winning the fight comfortably going into the 12th. But just so the champion, quote unquote, and the away fighter can't complain about anything, although, well, he might complain about the stoppage, right? Lee Wood managed to get him out of there. And that put a punctuation on his performance. And it was a good performance. He's under Ben Davison now, I believe. Pause. I'm talking about as trainer. Right, Ben Davison's his trainer. So he's been doing a good job with Lee Wood. Now, moving on from the actual boxing, because I know people are going to want to hear my thoughts and my take on the production and the production team, the presenters and commentators, etc. Well, the production value of Fight Camp 1 was very high. And I think most of us expected it to be, in terms of the camera work, just the layout, what do you want to call it, a set? The set, the ring with a big ramp coming down from Eddie Hearn's mansion, and the lights, everything. It was very, very high-end stuff, and yeah, all very impressive. In terms of the presenters, the pundits, there was apparently a couple of new additions to the DAZN presenting team who were not in the original lineup, which was announced a few weeks ago, I think it was. Well, I didn't see the new additions. I can only speak on the people that I actually saw. Andy Lee, I thought, was good, as I expected him to be. I like Andy Lee as a DAZN pundit. Tony Bellew was just there. He existed, but there was nothing really that stood out about what Bellew said. And the rest of the team were instantly forgettable. Now, this Maya Jama character, somebody said to me that she is just there to ask the experts questions, basically. And if that's her role, somebody who doesn't know anything about boxing, to just ask questions of the experts, I guess it can work. But what I will say in this instance is that her and Tony Bellew had absolutely no chemistry at all. There was no banter there was no camaraderie there. And I don't know whether it's because of the silly restrictions that are still going on, but only having the two of them there doesn't really work. You'd need Maya Jama and then maybe 2 or 3 experts, because that's what they do, for example, on Fox with their boxing, or on Showtime. One of them, I always forget the name. I think it's Fox that has Brian Costa. So Brian Costa doesn't strike me as somebody who is a boxing aficionado, but he's got a very good broadcast voice and talks well and so on. He's there really to ask questions of the experts, who are usually boxers, Sean Porter and all these other guys that work there. And he does a good job at that. But again, in order to have the camaraderie, in order to make that setup work, you need several of the experts, preferably who know each other. Then you can get all the banter back and forth. Now, some people are going to be saying, why do you care so much about banter, Hat Man? Isn't this just about the fights? Well, because on a boxing show, you want to be entertained all the way through, don't you? So what happens in between fights? Don't you want to hear entertaining and interesting discussions? And even during a fight, if it's a boring fight, don't you want to hear some banter? I do. You see, it's all part of the package. Yes, if you've got an incredible classic fight happening, it really doesn't matter who's commentating on it, because you're not really focused that much on the commentary. You're more focused on the fight itself. But if you're talking about a whole show where they've got lots of, periods in between fights where there's analysis going on and interviews and all this kind of stuff, you want it to be done in such a way that you find it interesting and or entertaining. And for Fight Camp 1, at least for me, DAZN did not deliver. I think Maya Jama has a pleasant enough demeanor to be able to act as that individual like Brian Costa who just interviews the experts. I think she has a pleasant enough demeanor for that. But as I say, they need more than just Tony Bellew. They need to put Tony Bellew with, I don't know, maybe Andy Lee, or Tony Bellew with Barry Jones if they could get him on board. Tony Bellew with Carl Froch, just somebody else, at least one other person, preferably two, where they can have some kind of banter and camaraderie going on. Yeah? Just having the Maya Jammer and the bomber, Tony Bellew, nah, it was a bit boring there. And as far as the other people, I mean, I can't remember that guy's name who was commentating with Andy Lee, but he is just Mr. Generic, I'm afraid to say. Mr. Generic. I don't know why Eddie Hearn keeps on saying he's the future of boxing broadcasting or whatever. It maybe because he's Eddie Hearn's mate. I don't know. But yeah, he's Mr. Generic. Andy Lee's good. Was it Laura Woods, the one who was going around interviewing everyone, the blonde girl? I mean, maybe she just needs to get in her stride, but at the moment, I didn't see any great talent there for this particular role. So, maybe they just need time to grow in to being a team together. Maybe we'll see more camaraderie as the weeks and months progress. But as of right now, it's definitely not hitting the ground running, this particular team. And of course, there were plenty of people saying to me, as I said previously, that Paulie Malignaggi needs to be part of this team. Malignaggi would really be a tremendous addition. I mean, he'd be the focal point, really, if he was to come on board with DAZN right now. Him and Andy Lee would work very well as a commentary partnership, even if you want to keep this other guy, whatever his name is. I forget his name. The generic guy that was commentating with Andy Lee. Even if you want to keep him as part of it, having Paulie Malignaggi and Andy Lee together with that guy, it would make it work a lot better. And of course, they've still got Mike Costello. They've still got Mike Costello to come on board as well. He's doing the Olympics at the moment. And I know some people rate him very highly for some strange reason. I don't really get it. But if you like Mike Costello, he's still to come. That's my take on Fight Camp #1. The fights themselves, the production, the presenters, it is what it is. I'm sure there are going to be lots of people upset in the comments below. And the people who are going to be upset, for the most part, about my views and opinions about the DAZN team, they're mostly going to be wet wipes, flannels, those kind of people. They're going to be generic individuals themselves. Because when you're dealing with these generic, random nobodies, they identify with people on the television who come across as random nobodies as well. Anybody with any kind of charisma or confidence, they feel intimidated by. They feel threatened by, so they don't like it. No, keep everything PC, keep everything generic. That's their mindset. That's what they want. When somebody comes along that has a deal of, a certain level of charisma, that has some fire in their belly. Oh, no, we don't want that. Kind of people that probably still watch Blue Peter, if that's even still running. Or what's the other one called? CITV? News Round for Kids? CITV is it the cartoons? What's the little, there was News Round for Kids. It's like a kids news thing. So that kind of program would be suitable for these individuals to watch. The kind of people that are going to be complaining about what I'm saying in this video. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm out.